Today on my channel for Mother's Day, we're going to go through a chapter of warrior women in the Women of the Bible Speak. We are going to discuss Deborah and Yael, so please join me. Stay tuned. Hello planner friends, and welcome to my channel. I'm One Crafty Dolo. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Thank you for taking your time and spending time with me. On Sundays on my channel, it's always about Jesus, faith studies, prayer journaling, and I always have a good mug of tea, often in the most ridiculous of mugs, because that's how I roll. So today we are appropriate for Mother's Day. We're going to go through what I studied in April in this book, The Women of the Bible Speak. This past month was all about Deborah and Yael. Boy, did I learn a lot, and I love sharing these lessons with you and then trying to think about how they apply to us as women of faith. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you're new, you're welcome to subscribe and join us. If you're returning and you are a subscriber, thank you. I always appreciate you spending time here with me. If I can lift you up in prayer, let me know. It is my honor and privilege to do that for you. Okay, so this is quite the tale. Now, just an FYI for those who are new, or maybe if you've been here, you forget. In the front, this is just a plain, barely decorated happy planner that I'm using. It's horizontal, as you can see. And what I do in the front for these studies is I quote the biblical verses and I write them down and I go through the biblical story that this is referencing, because it'll tell you what chapters, it'll say, Judges 4, 1 through whatever. And so I go through that and I write the story, biblical story, down on these pages in the month. Then I have a separate notes section in the back where I just kind of, I don't know if I want to say summarize, but I write down what I found, lessons, and I kind of draw it out that way. So let's talk about Deborah and Yael. Whew, what a story. Deborah was a prophet. She was a judge, and she's quite a warrior, to be honest with you. And Yael turns around and takes care of things and her own, and she does it without even hesitation. So these are very strong women who followed their convictions. And this whole lesson is a reminder about listening to God, staying in faith when it seems the odds are totally against you, and going forth and doing the right things and knowing that you're not alone. Those are really key points of this story. So, according to the author and what I read, basically things weren't going well for the Israelites. The people of Israel were, to quote the Bible, again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and it wasn't good. So he kind of gave them he oppressed the people for 20 years. And so we come to this point in time where they're going to be overrun and overtaken by a rival army. And Deborah, a prophetess, she was a wife of, I want to say, excuse my pronunciations, Lapidoth. And she was judging Israel at the time. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the people of Israel came to her for judgment. So she hears God, she sees what's going to happen, and she implements the plan in an active way. She sends for and summons Barak and says, God has commanded you to gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 from the people of, and she names the tribes, and I will draw out the leader, Sisera, and I will give him unto your hand. So she is instructing him per God's instructions on what to do. This is where it gets curious. Barak hears her. He listens, but he kind of equivocates. He says, yeah, maybe. If he says to her, if you will go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go. In other words, you have to be there with me, otherwise forget it. Not happening. And then she turns around, and this is, again, she can see, she's a prophet. She said, I will surely go with you. So she's taking on this danger. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. So one would assume it was her she's speaking of, right? Well, it wasn't, but we'll get to that. And so she roused him up, and she reminds Barak in Judges 4:14, this is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. Okay, against the odds, it seemed impossible, but as we know in our own life, with God, nothing is impossible, right? And she reminds him, does not the Lord go before you? And I think that's something we all need to think about in our daily lives that we often forget. I know I'm guilty of that too, especially in times of turmoil and crises. So the Lord routed Sisera and his chariots and all his army before Barak, and Sisera got down from his chariot and ran away on foot. So they beat his army and he fled. So Barak pursues the chariots and so forth, and they fell by the edge of the sword, and not a man was left. So despite innumerable odds and the fact that Sisera, the leader, got away, God's promise to the Israelites still held true. Here is where Yael comes in, okay? So normally I'll spend so many pages on one woman and then on the other, but Yael comes in the middle of the story, if you will. So Sisera flees away to the tent, outside the tent of Yael. She's the wife of Heber. They're Gentiles, they're not Jews, and her husband was part of this king of Hazor. The names get to be a bit much, but she's not part of the Israelites, and that's the key here. And she comes out to meet Sisera and says to him, turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, do not be afraid. So he turned aside to her into the tent, and she covered him with a rug. And he says to her, please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. So she opened a skin of milk, so more than water. She gave him something nourishing and gave him a drink and covered him. And he said to her, stand at the opening of the tent. If any man comes in and asks you, is anyone here? Say no. So he's telling her, she convinces him this is a safe place. She takes care of him. And he's like, basically cover for me. Well, here's where it gets kind of wild. She kills him. Basically, she takes a tent peg and a hammer. And while he's snoozing away, she goes and she whacks the tent peg in through his temple into the ground, and he died. And as Barak was pursuing him, Yael went to meet Barak and said, come, and I will show you the man whom you are seeking. So he went into her tent, and there lay Sisera dead with the tent peg in his temple. So on that day, God subdued Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the people of Israel. God worked through two women on behalf of the Israeli people. The Israelites, I would say, because there wasn't it. You know what I'm saying. Whoa. And I want you to understand something in reading this. In these verses, so we're like Judges 4:21 is where Yael kills him. It's pretty intense and matter of fact at the same time. It's like, yeah, so he died. She drove it in until it went down to the ground. It's just, whoa, this comes out of nowhere. And the prophecy of Deborah was fulfilled. Now, Judges 5 is referred to as a song of Deborah and Barak. And it's a long bunch of verses. But it basically, talks about how they fought again and how they won, and blessed they honor Yael. Most blessed of women be Yael, the wife of Heber, the Canaanite of tent-dwelling women. Most blessed. She sent her hand to the tent peg and her right hand, and it goes on and on. So not only was there this woman judge and prophet who agrees to lead them into battle, you've got the other woman who kills him, the leader. Then you've got this woman and Barak, but mostly Deborah, singing and praising Yael for killing him. It's really quite fascinating. Judges 5:31. So may all your enemies perish, O Lord, but your friends be like sun as he rises in the night. And the land had rest for 40 years. I mean, it's just amazing. He rises in his might. It would help if I could read my own handwriting. So God rises in his might. Now, I would suggest you read it. It's really quite the story. And so what I do, as I said back here, I make all these notes. And so she, as I said, a prophet and a judge. She was highly esteemed. And she had the foresight to know that Sisera would be killed by a woman. We assume it's by her. Nope. Yael comes in. And although outnumbered, the army of Sisera fell. Her victory song, the Song of Deborah, was a call to surrender themselves. And they say, the author of the book says, ourselves to God. I put the B's in here because that's what the name means, Deborah. Deborah, we've brought it down to Deborah in the States. Interestingly enough, in her song, as she mentions where she and Barak go to the tribes of Reuben and Asher and Dan to say, join us in the fight. And they say, no. So in the song, in Judges, she basically calls them out and says, paraphrasing here, you didn't help. And I want you to think about that. A woman passing judgment on and leading men at that time. This is an extraordinary thing. And yeah, I just, that's quite a wake up for us in our own lives, isn't it? That's really, there's I didn't get into it. The final stanza of her song refers to Sisera's mother waiting for him, and talks about how he was basically assaulting women as part of his conquest. The implication is sexually assaulting, and well, good, his mother stuck waiting for him. It's really quite something. This flips so much of what we've seen about womanhood and motherhood. Deborah sees herself as a mother who rose up in Israel when everyone had given up. And the author says, and I'm quoting, in Deborah's story, we see that motherhood can be fierce and warlike. And any of us who have had children know, boy, is that true. Through her actions, Israel prevails. Through her faithfulness, we see the promises and truth God gave us and gives us. Her life illustrates how powerful women are and can be, and how in our darkest moments, God guides us. Boom. Over here, I just talked about what Yael did and who she was and how she killed him and how Deborah sings her praises. And one of the points the author makes that a woman in the Bible praising another woman is rare. And given that they're both warriors working on behalf of the Israelites, you've got rare and rarer two circumstances. And the lesson here, so she talks about the tent peg and how the women were responsible for gathering up the pegs, putting up the tents. So that was a tool she had at her disposal. And what the author says, I'm paraphrasing here, but God gives us all the tools we need for the battles before us. He will not leave us stranded. Even when the odds are against us, if we listen to God and stay in faith, He will see us through. And He equips us through Jesus. He equipped us before, but then He sent us Jesus. So now we're really ready for the battles. And the point is, we may not have physical battles every day, but we may face spiritual battles each day, and God knows this. And the story of both women, one an outsider, that's Yael, and one an Israelite, who actively ensured that for the Israelites' survival. And It's a reminder to fight your battles with prayer, scripture, and armed with the knowledge that God's always with us. We need to trust Him. Friends, I couldn't think of a better way to leave you with a message for Mother's Day. We are equipped, we are strong, we are fierce in our motherhood. We are blessed by God. From my heart to yours, I'm wishing you a very happy Mother's Day, Planner friends. Thank you for spending your time with me. If you need prayers, let me know in the comments. Bye, Planner friends.